everyone, welcome back to Earl Grey Books. I'm Ellie. This is Fletchy looking... oh, okay. Well, he was gonna look adorable just in the corner there, but apparently not anymore. But today I thought I would bring to you this video idea that I've kind of had going in my head, I think for about a month and a half now, and I was just waiting for the time to film it and the time that it could actually go up. And as you can see by the title, that is that I'm going to be talking about some authors that I feel like let me down and a couple who didn't as well. By let me down, I mean that maybe I really enjoyed one book by them or a series or, multiple standalones, and then loved those and then read something else and then felt very disappointed in that. Maybe I hated it, or maybe it was just fine, but it just didn't stand up to everything else that I'd read. And I thought in doing that I should also kind of do the opposite and do a more positive spin on this and talk about some authors who I feel like have never let me down, who have always hit it out of the park for me and that I've loved. We're going to start with talking about the authors who let me down, and then we'll go into the ones who didn't. I filmed this the other day and it was like a 30-minute long video, and then I realized that my microphone hadn't turned on, so love that for me. But keeping in mind that last time it was really long, I'm going to jump straight into it and let's just go. So the author that kind of kicked off this whole idea for me was Hannah Kent. This is Burial Rites or Burial Rites. I never know. I always come to this title and I'm suddenly like, I don't know how to say this word out loud. Cool. So I love this book. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I don't think I've really talked about it on here since I read it, which I think was back in 2014, possibly 2015. It was either at the very end of 2014 or the very start of 2015. Anyway, I loved it. Fantastic. And then for this year, for Eurovisionathon, I decided to read Devotion, which is Hannah Kent's newest book. So she has 3 out, this, Devotion, and The Good People. And I read Devotion and it was a time. I really loved the first part of it. It's filled with what I was used to from Hannah Kent, which is absurdly beautiful lyrical writing and very atmospheric. So this one is set in Iceland in 1829. Devotion is set in Germany, and I think it's around the 1800s as well. Germany and South Australia. And yeah, it was that same atmospheric feeling, complex characters and relationships between characters. So all of that was fantastic. And then it took a very sharp turn completely away from what I had been expecting. And it just never, that thing changed the whole course of the book and ended up kind of ruining it for me, honestly. I didn't like it. I honestly would have preferred had it just been a sort of more simple story. The way it went just didn't interest me at all, which is sad because I've been really excited for that one. I think Hannah Kent is incredible. I've seen her talk a few times, and just the level of dedication that she puts into writing, oh man, I could never. Not even writing, but research. I remember when I saw her speak about this, she mentioned that she had actually gone and learnt some don't know exactly how much, but she'd gone and learned like old Icelandic so that she could read court documents, because this is based on a true story. And like, that's just incredible. Like, the amount of research she puts into things is just like extremely mind-blowing, and you could still see that in Devotion, but the story just lost it for me. And I haven't read The Good People. I tried it a long time ago and just didn't gel with the first few pages, but I'd always thought that was just me, so I don't know. I think I'm going to reread this one in 2023 for Eurovision-a-thon, and hopefully at least this one stands up. And I should say that with these authors that I feel like have let me down, that doesn't mean that I wouldn't read them again if Hannah Kent, or hopefully when Hannah Kent comes out with something else, I will 100% pick it up. But I just was disappointed. There are many authors that I wouldn't try again, and most of these, apart from I think maybe one, I would 100%. Next up is actually an author that I read for the first time this year, and I absolutely loved the first book that I read. It was fantastic. And that is All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. I did a whole vlog of me reading this. I cried a lot. I cry in the vlog, but I also just like sobbed a lot after reading it before I could even turn on the camera. This is a beautiful story. It is a romance. It's a very slow burn romance, but it's also a lot about grief, specifically the grief of a mother's passing. And I've talked about before that my mum passed away when I was 19, so that book really hit home for me. It was a very different situation than in the book, but I felt like Mariana Zapata just hit those right notes of what grief feels like. And especially I think that, you know, you grieve differently for different kinds of people in your life, like the different relationships that you had with those people. So I feel like, for example, that my grief for my mum is a lot different than the grief for my grandpa or my grandma or my nana. That while I was extremely close to all of them, there's just something different about my mum's passing. She was the first person we ever lost, and it's just a very different feeling from the grief of my grandparents. And I feel like this book really showed that, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And then I think a few weeks later I read Hands Down, and I had the complete opposite reaction. This was I don't know if I want to say that I hated it, because it was not enjoyable, but I don't know that hate feels like a very strong word. I guess I was disappointed in it. I knew that from All Roads Lead Here, and also I'd been forewarned that Mariana Zapata does very slow burn romance. And it's the same in this, but the difference for me between these books was that All Roads Lead Here was this fantastic depiction of grief and very emotion-filled, and then to go into Hands Down, I felt like there were absolutely no emotions to it whatsoever, and I didn't feel anything for the characters. And I had fully expected to I had a whole plan of like going back and reading Mariana Zapata's backlist like backwards. So All Roads Lead Here was her newest, and then Hands Down was the next one, and I was going to read like that and, you know, do a whole vlog series for it, you know, read a couple per vlog. and all that. And after finishing Hands Down, I was just like, absolutely not. We're not doing that. So I'm still going to read Zapata, but I gave up that idea of reading all of them, and I'm just going to pick up the ones that interest me in whatever order I want, and I think I'll enjoy it way more if I do it that way. I do already have one on my shelves, so you'll see that in a few days in my book haul for the end of the year, but I'll definitely be continuing her, just not all of them at this stage. Okay, next one, we're going to throw it back a few years. Back, I don't even know when I read this book, but this is One by Sarah Crossan, which is a beautiful book about conjoined twins, and it's told in verse, and it's just beautiful and heartbreaking, and I absolutely loved this. And I went through kind of a big Sarah Crossan phase. I read Apple and Rain, Moonrise, I think there was one other, but I can't remember it. And I loved all of those because Sarah Crossan is extremely good at emotion as well, and they are heartbreaking. All of her books are heartbreaking. Yeah, so I really loved these, and I read them all within a space of a few years, and then I think I hit, I don't know, I took a little bit of a break from reading anything from her, and then this year I read her adult debut. I'm going to put this one down, which is called Here is the Beehive, or Here Comes the Beehive. I don't even know. Anyway, that is a novel told in verse, and it is about an affair, the aftermath of an affair. The writing was good. It felt like I was reading a Sarah Crossan, but I don't care about reading about people's affairs. That's not something that interests me at all. That's not even, I don't even read that sort of thing in romance, because who wants to read about people cheating? Like, that's not fun. So I didn't enjoy that. I felt very disappointed by it, and I just felt it's supposed to be this book about grief and love and moving forward and being an adult and relationships and kind of that sort of thing. But again, I just didn't really feel the emotion there. I didn't care about any of the characters. I didn't care that they were in pain and that they were suffering and they were sad and all this stuff. I just thought they were vapid and annoying. And this is the only one that I'm like, you know what? I don't think I would pick up another Sarah Dessen. I wouldn't, but I wouldn't pick up another Sarah Crossan at this stage. Maybe if she released something that I really... Sorry, Fletchy wants to join us. That I really, really was interested by. I just don't think that she's for me anymore. I don't think that the kind of topics and things that she writes about grab me anymore, and I don't know, I don't really read that many novels in verse anymore. I used to read a lot of poetry, which was, I guess, why I would enjoy them as well, but I don't really do that anymore, so I don't know. I just don't see myself coming back to her. I've tried to sort of coax Fletchy to move, but it's not working, so apologies for the awkward shadow that he is casting, and hopefully he's not going to knock too many things around, but we're just going to keep going. Next one I have to talk about is Marie Rotosky. This is The Winner's Curse, which is the first book in the Winner's trilogy. Fletchy is watching me on screen right now. It's very creepy. So I absolutely loved this series. I read it when it came out, which I think was, yeah, like 2014. Yeah, absolutely loved it. And then, I don't know, it's a wonderful YA fantasy series, and it's like very political intrigue kind of stuff. Fantastic, loved it. And then I think it was in 2020 that I read The Midnight Lie, which was her first book since the end of the trilogy. I think it had been a couple of years, I'm not sure. Anyway, I came to that one and I went into it with kind of high expectations because I'd loved this one. I'd loved this series, and this new one was meant to be, again, pretty like political fantasy, also had a sapphic romance. Was so excited for it, and then I read it and did not enjoy it at all. It's been a while, so I can't remember my exact thoughts, but I remember feeling very bored by it and confused, I think, and I just didn't really enjoy it. I did buddy read it with Angel. We did a discussion about it. I can't remember if it's on my blog or on hers, but I'll link it below, and in that we went into depth about our feelings and all that about it. But I didn't enjoy it. I didn't continue the series. I would never pick it up again. I would pick her up again if she released something that I was interested in, is kind of what I'm getting at. Okay, last one for this section. And I have Kiersten White. So this is The Guinevere Deception. This was the first book I had ever read by her. It blew me away. I think I read this in 2019? Well, it was released in 2019, so I guess at the end of 2019, it made my favorite books of the year list. I thought it was fantastic. This is as you can probably guess, a sort of YA fantasy that is inspired by Arthurian legend. I've seen a few sort of things like that, like Merlin and Camelot and shows and things and different movies, but I never really read that much about King Arthur. I don't know why. It just wasn't, I don't think it was really something that we like read as children. In my family we read a lot of other things, but not really King Arthur stuff. So I was blown away by this. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And I reread it in preparation for book 2, The Camelot Betrayal, coming out. And then I came to this one and was severely disappointed by it. I was bored. I didn't enjoy it at all. And it had completely lost the magic that this book had for me when it came to this one, which is so sad because like it was this just, you know, that kind of second book lull that series seem to have sometimes. Seems to be kind of a trend in trilogies. And I still haven't picked up book 3 because I'm so nervous that I'm not going to like it. And I had such high hopes for this series after book 1. But I think I might try and pick it up in 2023 and be brave and all that. I do kind of question quite often whether I didn't enjoy this because it wasn't as good, or whether it was partly just the mood I was in at the time and that it just wasn't the right book for that week or month or whenever I read it. And so I do wonder if I reread this now, which I will probably do before reading the third one, whether I'd have a completely different opinion on it. But I guess we will find that out next year. And now we're going to move into the section of authors who I feel like haven't let me down. I could have easily made this entire list romance authors, but I pushed myself to put 2 other non-romance authors on there, just so it wasn't just like romance is perfect and I love everything, because I don't, but these authors are just fantastic. Starting off with, I don't know, I'm going to make this claim that this author is my favorite romance author, my favorite contemporary romance author. This is Chloe Lease. This is With You Forever, which is book 4 in the Bergman Brothers series. I just read this one in November, so it was easiest to pick off my bookshelf. I loved all 4 of the books in this series. They are fantastic, they are fun, they are witty. There's lots of good banter, lots of good family relationships and friendships and romances, obviously. But there's also just, every book has spectacular disability representation. Some of them are our own voices, some of them I believe aren't, but everything is just amazing. Even when I don't have that disability, so for example, this one has, the main female character has IBS, and even though I don't have that, I could feel a lot of my own experiences with diabetes and chronic pain and chronic fatigue and a host of other things just in the way that she would talk about disability and chronic illness. I felt that across all 4 books, and it's just such a nice feeling to sort of not just see yourself in literature a bit, but just really be able to interact with the characters and the world, because I think almost all of the characters in this world have some kind of disability or chronic illness or whatnot, and it's so fantastic to see a world where there's just, they're just surrounded by people that have disabilities and invisible illnesses and all this kind of stuff, because lots of people do in the world. A lot of my friends do, and it's nice to just see that, and it's not just one character that has something. Like, there are multiple people, and it's just fantastic. I have also read The Mistletoe Motive, which was Chloe Lease's romance release with Kobo last year, and that was also fantastic. That is a Christmas romance, and it's set in a bookshop. Hopefully, I'm hoping I may get to reread it this year if I have time, so I'll talk more about that one I think on Monday, actually. Anyway, kind of staying with that fantastic disability representation, I have Talia Hibbert. So this is Act Your Age, Eve Brown, which is the 3rd book in the Brown Sisters series. So again, I'd read this one recently, so it was just the easiest one to pick off my shelf. But I think the first one, Get a Life, Chloe Brown, is still my favorite. All 3 of these have disability representation, chronic illness representation, mental illness representation in some way. And they all just feel really real, and they're beautiful. I love the way that Talia writes, like, banter, and that's the quickest way to my heart is a romance novel with some good witty banter in, and both Chloe and Talia always just hit that mark. They're just all fantastic. So I loved this series. But I also, in October, read Meeting the Huntress, which is a paranormal romance. It was meant to be part of this series, but it hasn't been continued. And I think that one came out in 2018. So I think that we've kind of got that one book, and that might be it. which is kind of devastating because I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I had so much fun reading it. So the fact that that's kind of the only thing, the only one is really sad. But I had a fantastic time reading it, so I probably will reread it in the future. Okay, last romance author is Olivia Dade. This is Teach Me, which is book 1 in the There's Something About Marysburg series. So I've read this series, and I've also read the first 2 books in the Spoiler Alert series. And I have the third one, which was just recently released, waiting for me. I'm very excited. So even though I had read Chloe and Talia before, last year, and I think maybe even the year before, I wasn't a contemporary romance fan until this year. I'd loved those 2, and there are a few others I enjoyed, but on the whole, I just didn't really get it. It just wasn't for me. I was firmly in my historical romance camp, and I was enjoying that, and I wasn't really into contemporary romance or paranormal fantasy, anything like that. And this year definitely changed that. And for contemporary, it was really Spoiler Alert that made me fall in love with contemporary romance, because I read that and absolutely loved it. And so it's really Olivia Dade that made me fall in love with contemporary romance as a whole. Like I said, I'd read Chloe and Talia before and others, and I'd really enjoyed them, but it was really Olivia Dade that got me on this like contemporary romance kick this year. And it's probably been the thing I've read the most of. I'll talk more about that in, I don't know, a stats wrap up or something, because I've just made that claim. I don't know if it's true, but I feel like it is. And I just loved both of these series, and I would read absolutely anything that Olivia Dade put out. Okay, so let's move on to the 2 non-romance ones. First up, I have Anna James. This is Pages and Co, and this is book 1, Tilly and the Book Wanderers. So I believe this is the only books that Anna James has out, is this series. But I've read 4 of them. I loved all 4 of them so much. Definitely among my favorite reads of the particular years that they were released. And I recommend this to so many people. When I first read this, I was still working as a bookseller, so I was constantly trying to push this onto people because it's so good. Usually when I talk about it, I describe it as this. If you are someone who loved reading as a kid, or even if you came to it later as an adult, you will love this book. This is the perfect book for book lovers, because Tilly and her family and her friend can travel into the pages of books and meet characters. So you might be able to kind of see, we've got Anne of Green Gables and Alice in Wonderland, and they can go all through different pages and meet these people and kind of be friends with the characters. And who doesn't want that? Like, that sounds like so much fun, to be able to walk into a book but also have the option to leave, because some of the books you're like, I definitely don't want to get stuck in this world. But it's such a fun series, and I've loved all 4. None of them have let me down at all. Now, with all the others, I've just taken 1, maybe 2 books off the shelf. With this author, I had to bring all 4 that I have. And that author is Jacqueline Woodson, because she is fantastic. So I think I discovered her in 2018. I think I bought Brown Girl Dreaming at a airport bookstore in the US, I think. And it was fantastic. It blew me away. This is also another novel in verse. This is it's not a novel, it's like a memoir, and it was beautiful, and I'm pretty sure I cried like a lot. And then since then I've read Another Brooklyn, Red at the Bone, and Before the Ever After. This one is also in verse, but these two are kind of not. They're in a weird kind of, yeah, I don't really know how to describe it. But they are all fantastic, and I've loved all of them. I think this one still remains my favorite, but I also would probably like to reread some of these and move on to some of her other books as well, because they are just beautiful and heartbreaking. Okay, that is it for the video. I think this one has been even longer than half an hour, so whoops, I just had a lot of feelings about these. And since it's already been super long, I'm going to wrap this up nice and quickly. So thank you all so much for watching. I'd love to hear if you have any authors who fit in these two categories. I'd love to know if you've read any of the ones I've mentioned and what you thought. And I will catch you all next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.